We kick off this panel discussion about discussing some of the unexplored sectors and its potential for growth. Let me take a couple of minutes to set the stage for our discussion on this topic. During our course of research, on the climate smart agriculture space, we have looked at solutions that are on farm or closer to farm and have the dual impact of improving the farmer income and building the resilience to climate. Given the scale of agriculture in India, we witness multiple number of enterprises that are working in this space and have been attracting capital across different sources of capital, that is grants, equity or debt. However, we notice certain requirements and opportunities that are not fully tapped. For instance, catalytic capital can play a crucial role in raising farmer awareness and conducting on-farm or near-farm pilot projects to drive the adoption of the climate smart practices. When we speak about enterprises working in this space, they are still in the early initial stages of growth, where patient capital will play a crucial role in supporting them develop and deploy their solutions. Along with the financial support, enterprises also need technical guidance and assistance in building alliances with the stakeholders as well. That is, to build market linkages to sell the produce. We also have the opportunity for the concessional capital providers too. This is to lend to agri-focused financial intermediaries who have the on-ground presence and the capacity for onward lending to the climate smart agriculture enterprises and the farmers who are willing to adopt the solutions but also have a limited credit history. All of these are good from a research standpoint, but to understand this further, there were a few thoughts and questions that were coming to our mind during our research as well. Is CSA at a stage where we need a sector-focused fund? Or what is the approach in ensuring the long-term adoption of climate smart practices? What are the challenges in lending to the financial intermediaries? Let me leave the stage with these questions, and I'm sure we'll address some of these during our panel discussion as well. So without much of a delay, I would like to take the opportunity to call upon Hari Rajagopal, our moderator for this discussion. To give you a brief about Hari, he's a specialist in agriculture and impact finance with over 15 years of experience. He has been working with institutions such as ICICI Bank, Rabobank Group and Samarthi. He brings an interesting blend of working across diverse asset classes and on both resource sharing and on lending or deployment side. Over to you, Hari.
Good evening everyone. Thanks IIC, thanks Hari for setting the context. Climate smart agriculture is a vast subject, an interesting subject, and when it comes to innovation, I don't know how much you paint the canvas, the parts of it will remain blank because it's still evolving. So pardon me if I miss some critical aspects of the innovation that I am seeing in the sector. So if I have to bucket them, I think there are three buckets. I think one is, I would say, largely digital interventions. Second bucket, I would say, largely physical. And the third bucket, I would say, is more like supply chain interventions, which is solving for climate. When you look at the digital bucket, clearly lots of innovations. In fact, most of agri-tech continue to be digital in India. And the whole thing revolves around capturing data from multiple sources. Remote sensing is picking up. There's some start we made with drones, applications of IoT, sensor devices, application of mobile phones, weather stations. So I don't think that data capture is a big issue. Of course, hardware will evolve, and so is the data quality. Interestingly, most of our entrepreneurs come from tech background, very smart in data modeling. So we build very interesting models. And a lot of the use cases are in farmer advisory, for example, when to irrigate, how much to irrigate, predicting pest attacks, doing soil testing to figure out how much urea, how much DAP, etc. So in a way helping resource optimization. Interestingly, farmers are not willing to pay for it. So I think that's a big question. I'm not saying it's a black and white issue, but the experience so far is that it's not easy to build subscription model around farmer advice. So who's paying for it? Of course, there are value chain players. I think financial institutions is one of them. There are farm credit scores developed by likes of Cycle, etc., where banks have become the customers. Parametric insurance has picked up a bit. I think that is another interesting opportunity. So I think this is one area where I think there's enough maturity in the ecosystem. There is capital available. Margins are good, but scale is a challenge. If you look at the next bucket, is mostly physical interventions. So very difficult to generalize it, but having said that, let's say an hydrogel solution from EF polymer, which reduces the water requirement, a urea deep placement machinery from Distinct Horizon, which reduces urea consumption by almost 1/3, a board charger from Urdhvam, even a cold room for that matter, right? A chiller from Promethean, all that, in a way, physical interventions, but definitely helping reduce food loss, reducing post-harvest losses, and also in some ways optimizing a lot of input and improving resource efficiency. This space, I think a lot of VCs like physical investment, so difficult to raise money here. Margins are good, scale to me is still a bit of a challenge, and I think there's a lot of public investment required to get this going. Lastly, supply chain interventions. I think most of the agri-tech is around market linkage, pump to poke. I don't think climate tech was ever a goal for a lot of these startups, but whether it was a goal or not, they have helped supply chain become more traceable, efficient, transparent, and in that process, reducing food losses and reducing intermediation and bringing demand and supply closer, of course, in some ways helping the climate. Of course, a lot of money has come into the sector. Almost 80% of the capital which has come into agri-tech has gone into supply chain interventions. So money is there, margins still work in progress. But having said that, I think there's kind of VC money which has gone into this. Let's see how these models pan out in time to come. So I don't want to take much more time, but I think we made a good start. Long way to go. I personally believe, though a lot of agri-tech funds are becoming climate tech, it's not a VC space. It needs 15-20 years of patient capital and a lot of public intervention and policy intervention to make it successful. That's all.
Thanks, Devendra. This very valid points, and we'll probably take them further to say whether debt equity is behaving differently with these three buckets. But let me also hand over first to Bram to walk us through the work that Ramo Foundation is doing.
Yeah, thank you, Hari. And my apologies because I deviated a bit from the topic. Let me tell you something about the country where I'm from. In my country, agri-innovation is aimed at sustainable production and getting bigger and more nutritious crops. Like geothermal energy, hydroponics, precision agriculture, all is there. And all is there to feed the ever-growing population in the world. So what is the result? With less than 2 lakhs of farmers, we are now the second largest exporter in the world, behind the US. Actually, you can think of us as a hub for other countries, but at the same time, 75% of our production is homegrown. And it's kind of amazing that the country that I'm talking about, most of you will probably know it already, is the Netherlands, which is a 17 million population country with 75,000 agribusinesses, which puts things a bit in perspective if you talk about India, of course. So there are even instances in the Netherlands where on 14 hectares of land, 10 crores of tomatoes are being produced on an annual basis. So the question is, of course, here, what causes all this? What causes a country so small as the Netherlands to be producing this much of agricultural products? I think there are two things. There's urgency and necessity, and at the same time, and I think more importantly, the response to that urgency and necessity. So if you go back in history, in the Second World War, in the last year of the Second World War, the Netherlands was the last country actually to face a hunger winter. So during that period, there was a lot of people who were starving to death literally, or trying to survive by eating leaves and tulip bulbs, which was of course a devastating situation for the country, especially with the victory of the war in plain sight. So the government at that moment decided no more starvation in the country, and we need to put in some reforms to make sure that everyone in the country has sufficient food on the table. So with that, the government put in a lot of effort to reform the agricultural sector and make sure that a lot of land holdings were being combined, economies of scale were being obtained, and in the end everyone can have sufficient food to the table. So with that, and in combination with the Green Revolution in the 60s and 70s, Netherlands is nowadays thriving and being the second largest exporter, partly because of these reforms that happened in that period of time. So the urgency was there, and the government was definitely acting upon it. But what is happening nowadays is that because of these economies of scale, monoculture was of course one of the big drivers here. And we see now that biodiversity is declining in the country. Nitrogen emissions are at an all-time high. And even at Rabobank head office, there are almost on a daily basis protests nowadays by Greenpeace and Extinction Rebellion, because we are the largest financier of the agricultural sector. So I think if you look at the two facts nowadays that need to be addressed, is one, there is definitely need for food because in 2050 there are more or less 10 billion people in the world. And two, the health condition of the planet is in a bad shape. I think these two things are clear. And now coming to climate smart agriculture, which is the topic of this session of course, is that the urgency is definitely there. And the necessity is also there. But we're still here in a room talking about how to invest in this topic, right? I think there is a big difference with Netherlands in the Second World War. In the Second World War, all people in the country suffered the same. Looking at the situation of today, there are privileged and underprivileged people. So, privileged people would say if there's a flooding or a heat wave, let's just move to another part of the world or another part of the country. If temperatures are rising, let's just buy an AC. And I think if I look around this room today, we are with mostly privileged people. And we're sitting here in the AC. So we are not the ones that face the consequences of this climate change every day. We read about it, but we're not out there in the field working on our land holdings. But luckily today with this group of people, we are here with like-minded ones, and I think everyone is clear that there needs to be investments in climate smart agriculture, while keeping our heads cool in AC. So with Rabo Foundation, we have set up some programs on climate smart agriculture. In 2017, we started with the first program with some of the MBFC partners here in India. My colleague Dheeraj will tell you a bit more about it. And luckily with Rabobank, we have 125 years of experience because we were set up once as a farmer-producer organization, and now developed in a international food and agri-bank. And with the foundation, we try to address topics that are so pressing and that concern farmers in their everyday lives. So, if we would like to act climate smart, I think it does not start with the underprivileged while they are being the ones facing the consequences. But I think it starts with the privileged ones that need to support them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bram. It puts a lot of perspective in comparison with 21st century India and 20th century Netherlands. Of course, the seminal work of the foundation, and Dheeraj, I think during the panel to bring a flavor of the kind of instruments which are there in the foundation's armory as far as CSA is concerned. Now, I want to kind of pull in the innovators here, both Varun from Raheja Solar and Jyoti from Promethean. And in what Hemendra just said, like you are in which bucket of innovation, and what kind of fundraising challenges or debt or equity or other forms of capital are you facing? It will be very interesting to have the perspectives from the entities, the companies.
My name is Joffrey and I work with Promethean Power Systems. So my own belief is that whichever bucket you are starting out with, eventually if you want to sustain, you have to go through all the three buckets. So others, it's quite difficult. Now, so Promethean basically is a cold chain solutions company. We have a proprietary technology which enables us to chill milk even in the absence of electricity, which means we eliminate diesel generators and all other fossil fuel-based solutions. Now, we focus primarily on the dairy industry because that seemed the more immediate need when we started out. And using this technology, we developed bulk milk chillers. We have sold over 2,500 of them, working with all the major dairies in India. But when we started working really deep in rural games, one thing that the sizes of the bulk milk chillers are actually not viable for most of the villages in India. Less than 20% of the villages in India actually have a chilling infrastructure. And the remaining 80% milk is collected and transported in ambient temperatures. So we started scaling down and we developed a chiller which works at with even 240 liters capacity, which kind of sees the average across India. Now, when we developed this, we also realized that this is something that is a new cell, so we have to do it ourselves. So we picked up 3 or 4 districts. So we moved from the physical to the value chain over a period of 5 to 6 years. We kind of picked out 3 or 4 districts in Maharashtra, Osmanabad and Latur. Very deliberately picked up because these were the areas where organized dairy was not prevalent, which played a very big role in the financing requirement we want. So we went into those areas where organized dairy was not there because that was where we could actually make a difference. We started working with NGOs and FPOs and we installed these machines. And we have created a system where the farmers, the NGO members, the FPO members bring the milk, we chill it and we sell it forward to larger dairy companies. Dairy companies' proposition is very simple. Their value chain cost doesn't go up, but they get milk which is of far superior quality because they're chilling in the village. For the farmers, we were like most villages, we were the first gig in town in terms of organized dairy, so they were getting assured rates, transparency, timely payments, etc. Now, when it comes to the financing part, there are obviously 3 kinds of finances that we access. Grant is very obvious. Obviously, but grant can help you in the starting, but it can't create a viable business or it can't be a basis for your business. So you can't create a sustainable model on that. The next comes to debt, where we actually raise debt for installing these machines. So every installation costs us around 3 to 4 lakh rupees, which is mostly funded through debt. And there the challenge we face at this point of time is the extremely high cost of debt. So while we are doing something which eventually helps the farmer, there is a lot of climate mitigation because we are eliminating diesel from both in transportation as well as in chilling. And we also work only with women farmers. So we meet many of the, but still our debt cost is high, which increases our return on investment and our period. So that's the first challenge we face. But debt is available. So there is no problem of access, the problem is of high cost. The second is, as I mentioned, we are getting into areas where milk density has been typically low. When we get into these machines, it is in our interest that the volumes increase as fast as possible, which means that we have to add more cattle into the ecosystem, which means that the farmers have to get loan. Their interest rates are high, but we find that the problem is access. Most of the companies we discuss with don't want to give, are quite happy giving loans to farmers who have already 2 cattle, 3 cattle. People have been pouring with us for 9 months. So we try to explain to them that we are starting this or we are getting into a village. I can't wait for 9 months. No farmer is going to wait for 9 months, and I can't wait for 9 months. By 9 months, that village is dead for me because I don't reach this. So So that's access is, we find, the primary challenge. Interest rates are 23-24%, but that's manageable because the way we structure it in terms of repayment, etc., that's quite manageable. The challenge is access. Even now, getting a partner to work with us across these villages who can give loans to all farmers, even though we guarantee payments from our milk value chain, this is number two challenge that we face. Yeah, thanks.
So I will follow up from the but let me first introduce what Raheja Solar do. So I represent Raheja Solar. This is like a social enterprise started to support farmers, and the main purpose behind Raheja Solar was the world is full of resources. Like everywhere, if you go outside in the farm, you will find multiple resources which is unused. And most of the time, you don't see the monetary value in it, and that's where Raheja Solar comes in and understands the potential of the product and convert them into something premium. Just like we convert the farmer's excess dried tomato, the fresh tomato into sun-dried tomatoes, which can be used in like Italian pizza, or something else like mango, which is sometimes got thrown away in the rural part of Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, can be converted into something dried mango. It's like a premium commodity in the Netherlands. So we identify those potential products at the farm level where the value is untapped and the product which farmers just throw it away. So coming on the part of the fund raise, I would say being in a climate startup is the best time to win the industry because now consumers are pressurizing the brands. At the same point, the government is pressurizing the brands at the same point. And it's a perfect situation where the corporates, the consumers, everybody is looking for a change. And being an innovator, it's the right time where the fund is available. You just need to create a right solution. Now, everybody knows the three potential options for it: grant, debt, and equity. So, to get a grant, you just need an impact model and actually need the impact on ground, that's for sure. Either you create on saving resources, water, or energy, you can easily get a grant, that's for sure. But the second point, if you need to scale those things, you need both debt and equity. But for that, you need unit economics, and especially your margins have to be very tight. Once you get those things, and if there is a financer, let's example market linkage, as what Hemant sir shared, even there is any debt can come in because they want as less as possible once they invest money in any capex. But at the same point, once you validate all those pilots, you create a scalability potential and something proprietary which like VCs just love. You can get something which other big brands, big billion companies don't come over you. If you can crack those things, you're like a diamond in the coal mine. And that's what every social enterprise wants to be. And that's what we are also trying to become. The impact has to be there. At the same point, unit economics has to be very, very high to scale this potential. And once you create a model where everybody can follow the same thing, your standards and all, you build that business. That's what, like as a social enterprise, what our criteria is. And that's what our vision is, build a big business in agri-tech sector.
Thanks to the Anand both. So would it be fair to say that if the product needs to be developed further, you have to be the first mover of your product? For example, you said from chillers to value chains, and you are clearly not only trying the product but also finding the market linkage. So is it something like the physical and supply chain are kind of getting bundled in such a scale and volumes and economics?
So in our case, it was twofold. So one is when we were selling the chillers on a B2B basis, we found that the market was ultimately limited. There wouldn't be, we wouldn't be able to go beyond a certain scale. And the second is there was very little control on the impact we could create. If our mission is to improve farmer incomes, when we sell it on a B2B basis, it's very difficult for us. What the dairy does with this is, we would like to hope that they go to new villages and get in new farmers, but that may not be the case. So that was the second driver for us to actually get into the value chain. So that, because what we do is in addition to buying the milk for them, I always told you, we also facilitate loans, we also give advisory, free advisory on, not monetized yet, but advisory on nutrition through veterinary doctors, and we also give them free. All in the hope that ultimately it all comes back to the value chain and builds up the business.
So let's hold on to that thought of end user financing, equipment financing, because clearly I want to come to you, Garima, next. That yes, all this is all right. That
mindset of India's consumer. So let's go back to a bit of ancient time. During Mahabharata, there is an instance, a large family of deers, they came to Arjun and they requested Arjun to stop excessive hunting because that will make the deer extinct. And so Arjun, without even in a blink of an eye, he readily agreed. And so nature conservation is already in the mindset of consumers. So we begin our journey from there. Let's talk about the era of independence. During that time, 100% of Indian farming was organic. Our soil health was extremely good. It is only of late that we have started tweaking a bit into agriculture practices, and today where we are, wherever we are, today if Neil Armstrong, when he went to the moon, the first thing he said was a blue planet. And today, if he gets a chance to go there again and he looks at Delhi, he may call it a black planet, not blue anymore. So we are dealing with a very big kind of a problem here. So let's move a bit forward. During 1990s, if you remember, and my mother, whenever we are going out for shopping, she will carry certain bags with her. And everybody would look at us. Today, the entire world is doing the same, and they are teaching us the same. So the point to drive home is that the mindset of Indian consumer begins from conservation of nature. The rate of adaptation is very high here. The road is very challenging, needless to say. Now, we of course have a lot of innovators on this panel doing a lot of good stuff, which is along, needless to say. Come to the consumer. First of all, is there a cost to it? Certainly, yes. We call it greenium today, or greenium, which also means a green inflation. So fortunately, we have moved our discussion a bit from coal to solar to wind in Netherlands. So that's a very good part of the entire world where we are moving towards. The green inflation will come. It will be here. Will the consumer pay for it readily today? The answer is no. It will take its own journey. A lot of companies are taking initiatives. For example, I represent LDC, which is Louis Dreyfus Company. And a lot of companies like us have taken mandates to reach our targets of sustainability. We are doing that. So as I said, it's a challenging road ahead. But at the end of the day, we are all guests on Mother Earth. And so we have to give it back to the next generation in a similar manner. So I'm sure that with that mindset, the consumers will absorb in and will be ready to adopt these kind of initiatives and sustainability into their daily consumption patterns.
Garima, on that same thought, now the greenium, if we say Dutch customers, or if we say European customers or American customers are more evolved, and of course, while we have a mindset, our ability to pay a premium for say, naturally sourced milk, etc., is only improving slowly, then would you say that export-facing value chains is where the first opportunity of climate smart crops is? Would that be a fair statement, or do you see that?
I will partially agree, yes. First of all, today, the world has to look at Indian consumer honestly. We are moving towards being the most populous country. 1.7 billion is not an easy number to deal with. What is going to happen is that in the next decade or so, Indian consumer and consumerism is being looked at. India is going to pull maximum number of people from poverty to reach middle class, and with that change, we will see a lot of mindset change in the consumer. A consumer today is asking for healthy, safe products, asking for more protein in the country. Fortunately, if you look at Indian plate, we eat a lot of pulses. Now, pulses are naturally very sustainable crops. India is also moving towards millet consumption. So millets and pulses both are very sustainable crops, and it's a very happy situation for us as a country. And so to your question, for our export products, needless to say, we need to do a lot of work on the quality, front that we are doing. But Indian consumer today is very strong. The rate of adoption, as I said, is very high in India. And if we want to bring that change, it will be very fast in the country.
Thanks, sir.
No, just to Garima's point, on the consumer demand perspective, I think we are very far. Contradictory view, but I think consumers are not ready to pay premium for products which are sustainably produced. They are not even asking for the data to prove that it is sustainably produced. So I think it's a matter of time, but I totally agree, we need to create demand for this innovation to scale.
Moving on the subject, maybe I want to get in, I know what I call the enablers, into the room that says, as Bilgro Street, you've been incubating startups for a while, longer than before it became fashionable. And you've seen the fundraising challenges of various entities on both debt and equity and grant side. So, one would be, what do you see as a challenge? And then a specific question is, can the incubator do more in today's time and era, or is the same role, give space, give the stake, give mentorship, call an expert, the same learning model?
Right. Okay, I think we are a non-profit and we've been around since 2001. And what we see is, internally we look at it a little bit of like a spiral. First 10 years that Bilgro existed, we thought we got to support grassroots entrepreneurs, and at that time, access to markets didn't exist. So we were hoping how could innovators like, for example, Varun here, as an example, reach markets. We tried hard for 10 years, and we realized the entrepreneurs themselves are not ready. Yeah, so we pulled back. The second decade was spent in focusing on entrepreneurs. So at the same time, all this, the landscape in India changed. CSR acts and income tax acts, all that stuff changed. But at the same time, I think the venture capital industry took off. Today, third decade, Bilgro is back, looking at how to build markets, because exactly the same question. It is, there's been a bit of money which has come in. There are a whole bunch of startups trying to do something, and but the markets actually don't exist. On one side, consumers won't pay. On the second side, we keep saying we'll go back to the farmer and give him something, and we expect the farmer to pay when he's living hand to mouth. There's always been a cash flow issue with him, and we talk about usurious interest rates. So he's not the guy to pay. Okay, the supply chain doesn't want to pay. Consumers don't want to pay, and then you assume that digital will do magic. No, it won't. Okay. You can't eat digital stuff. So when I see things like Promethean and I think it's solar dryers, then I think there's some hope. Yeah? But that's exactly the point. Ads is not going to be an overnight magical success of some hockey stick or whatever sticky growth you want. It's going to come down to saying, okay, am I building a business? Am I building supply chain and ecosystem? An ecosystem cannot be left to someone saying someone has to build the ecosystem. Some places, Bilgro is building the ecosystem. Right? And I know, for example, Dinesh is a good friend. He is one of the, he and Mark are one of the few VCs who go down to the field and even understand what's happening, right? And we need more of those, and we also need more of incubators to start waking up and saying, genetic mentor is not enough anymore. And we, for example, do a lot of, we actually do some guarantees. We've done concessional debt. We've lent at 6%, not too much, but very little. We've done some end-user financing. All the stuff that he's talking about is home truth songs. We're trying to make that place happen. But the reality is, they are like a drop in the ocean. To conclude, I think that 900 odd incubators in this country and a whole pile of cash which is going there and grants could work far harder. And the last thing it should be doing is give more and more grants to an innovator who is doing the same Me2 model as 101 others. So like for example, supply chain, anyone who's saying I'm doing more and more market linkages, I think boss, until you know how you're making money, who your customer is, you shouldn't shovel grants to more beds. So business models in the ecosystem actually change. So let me pause there.
Maybe Jinesh, I want to ask your view, or because you've seen more business models thrown at you than I think many of us together here. So in your view, what are the models that seem to be making money either from the farmer or the customer? Is there even a monetizable agri business model? Because that's what you see.
Look, when we look at agriculture and a farmer has 25 or 30 interactions required with the outside world. Whether it's buying inputs, selling outputs, getting advisory, subsidy documents, talking to OEMs, talking to people who are trying to do pilots with farmers, large companies like Dreyfus trying to go and connect with the farmers, FPUs, everywhere. And unfortunately, everyone looks at market linkages saying, I'm going to buy from farmers and sell to someone. But that's not the case, right? Then there's a value being done right from the intermediaries. I mean, who's going to go to a farmer and go and buy produce from him? He needs to go to a smaller aggregators, and that's a supply chain which is working out. There is so much of inefficiencies in the entire value chain, right? I mean, even today when we look at supply chain, we think it's a great business model, right? I mean, companies like Dehat and Agrostar have done it, but there are various verticals within, like, let's say, a irrigation platform. India has like so many pump manufacturers, so many pipe manufacturers, so many electrical wire manufacturers. There is no universalization of technology. We have 15 to 20% of India is irrigated. There is not a, I mean, if you look at dairy segment, right, we need silage. I mean, who is making the silage? I mean, Punjab Agro makes some 40,000 tons of silage in this country, and farmers do something like. I mean, in a country like India, where you have 300 million cattle, you're talking of like 70,000 to 80,000 tons of silage. So even in that, market linkages work. I think it's all about entrepreneurs need to look in a very strategic manner. What are they investing into it? If they look at, say, there is a success of Dehat, there is a success of Propin or XYZ company, and say, I'm going to make the next Dehat. That's a stupidity, right? If someone has $200 million, you want to create a next competition to it, you're not going to be successful. Like if you want to say, I want to create a next Flipkart in agriculture sector, why do you need that? So when we look at it, we look at holistically how we are doing it. Business models remain the same. I mean, the agriculture as a sector is one of the most inefficient sector. Good thing is that you pick up any piece of the value chain and you reduce the inefficiencies. Everyone in the value chain makes money, right from farmers to the intermediaries to the banks. At some point, data aggregation also will get paid. Maybe not by the farmers, but farmers and the consumers are eventually going to pay it, right? Farmers are going to get better inputs, and the input companies are going to charge for the services they are offering. So that is how I look at it. So I would not discard anything, but trying to do a Me Too thing and hoping the result would be different is not working out. But if you look at the sector with a fresh pair of eyes, I mean, Jofin is doing this in Promethean, right? But if you can do better silage and start giving more silage to farmers, the ability of the farmers to give you more milk increases, and that means economies of scale coming to you. And it's not a rocket science. I mean, simple thing like soil testing. I mean, government of India has a soil testing data which is garbage, right? I mean, it's as worse as possible. And we have a couple of companies, including Krishi Datta, which is working on soil testing. Right soil testing with the feedback saying what is that you require inputs can reduce the cost of farming by 30-40%. And that is where the money is, right? And so that's how I look around it. So business model will remain the same because inefficiencies are there, but we need to look in a very different manner.
Great by Janesh, and then I want to go to you, Dheeraj. Now, if we say business models should be directly sensible, addressing areas of inefficiency and do something novel rather than doing more of the same kind of places, you seem to suggest that maybe, equity capital, just trying to look at some kind of a term bet can work. Now, if I look from a debt lens, and it's important because we don't have a NBFC representative here, but maybe few of us can double hand. From debt which needs, say, predictable cash flows, some kind of proven track record, maybe some collateral, do you think there are more challenges because of the newness of some of these business models?
Look, I think debt and equity has its own space under the sun, right? I mean, debt should not try to venture into area where equity is, right? We're going to take the highest risk, we're going to make the business model, we're going to pump in capital, we're going to raise more rounds. And the day I get profitable, I will come to first NBFCs and hopefully at 17-18%. And once I become scale, I'm going to remove NBFCs and get into banks, right? Because that's a PSL lending. So I think if I can get the debt at the rate of 6 to 8%, I think the farming as a profession becomes very profitable. irony is that the existing cost of capital is 35-40% from the money lenders, 25-30% from the NBFCs. I mean, I don't know any other business in the world can make profit at 25-30% cost of capital. I mean, expecting agriculture to be profitable by paying 30% interest rate, I think it's tough. So NBFCs also have to relook. It looks like if there is a policy intervention, because NBFCs can't get cost of capital below 50-60%, right? I mean, they can't do it. I mean, it's a chicken and egg story, but hopefully I think at some point banks will realize that NBFCs should be given the PSL benefit at some point.
Well, that's an important point, Rajesh, you make, and what to come to you, Dheeraj, because you, not only the foundation is providing debt to so many agri financial intermediaries, also providing credit guarantees to kind of reduce the risk and trying to influence access to capital and the cost of access to that capital. Over to you.
Hi everyone. So very interesting conversation going on, and I would, Srini has raised a very right point that grants cannot be, we cannot go on giving grants forever and ever. And we, as a foundation, are not a typical foundation. We consider ourselves to be impact financiers, and we believe that providing financing to our target borrower, be it an FPO or an AgTech or an agri enterprise or farmer, would hold them more accountable and help them build their, financial, accountability and make them more eligible for loans going forward rather than, depending on grant and moving forward. With that philosophy in mind, we have been intervening in Indian agri space for the last, I think, 15 years now. And through our guarantee programs, we enable NBFCs and banks to lend to farmer producer organizations which otherwise would not have got financing, agri enterprises, AgTech startups, especially AgTech startups, Jinesh said about debt financing required at a certain stage, but if working capital is available by some lenders, then why not take it? So, working capital is cheaper than equity still, and you have to be rather bold enough to take those risky bets on startups. So we have partnered with NBFCs here. They are not here in this room, but in the conference, who have taken those bets with us and provided financing to those agri startups. They have mentioned about our programs in climate smart agriculture. So in October 2018, we launched a Sustainable Landscape Guarantee Program along with USAID. This was a 15 million loan portfolio guarantee program where both Rabu Foundation and USAID provided guarantee cover to two organizations, Samruddhi Finance and Ananya, to enable them to lend to enterprises working in the sustainable landscape sector, which includes agroforestry activities that reduce greenhouse gas emission. So we were talking about climate smart agriculture in 2018 when nobody else was talking about it. It was a new term, still not taken up by the VC community, the investor community, the lending community. And now it's the top of the town. We started then. It's been 5 years now. We did an impact assessment study of the program that we did. And what we found out that because of the program that we started with these NBFCs, there was a change in the strategy of these NBFCs. They never thought about getting into green financing or even, doing climate smart agriculture. This was a new area for them, and they were able to develop, strategy to onboard supplying into this new area. Their ability to take risk also went up because of our guarantee. Then we showed that we had an impact on, farmers at farmer level also, and most of the farmers were able to, change their way of farming, where they use, climate adaptation practices like intercropping, crop rotation. Another, outcome was that most of them did not go through climate shock, but some of them which went through the climate shock were able to recover from it. So it is kind of, the impact assessment showed that yes, this, programs like this, enable flow of liquidity, flow of capital into the sector,
and have an impact on the lender as well as on the the end borrower. Last year, we along with the IKEA Foundation launched a Climate Smart Agriculture Financing Program. This is funded by 4 lenders, Avanti, Ananya, Samruddhi, and Caspian. This is again to provide financing to enterprises in renewable energy, those which are promoting climate adaptation, climate mitigation, and climate resilience practices, regenerative agriculture, circular use. And this was 55 million euro program spread over 6 years. And yes, we hope that there is more offtake, now that there is more awareness about this, climate smart agriculture in schools. And we hope better outcomes than our current.
Yes, do you think in a brand for foundation, which the bank's foundation is the forefront of bringing high-risk banks into banks, do you think it's time to move credit guarantees beyond lending to, of course, the believers, the NBFCs who actually want to be in this space, to also crowd in banks through co-lending or guarantees for securitization programs for, say, equipment, renewable energy equipment, or all this kind of climate smart equipment? Do you think the time has come? Because banks and NBFC are signing co-lending, but there are no guarantees really available for co-lending. So, what do you think? Something can work?
So we play a sector role. So we don't want to differentiate between NBFC and bank. Our guarantees available to both, but in our experience, dealing with banks has been most difficult. They have big bureaucracies within different departments, which makes them much more rigid as compared to an NBFC, which is much more flexible and able to implement our program. Co-lending, in fact, Hari has picked up in the last 2 years. It also had its initial 2 years of struggle with banks not understanding what co-lending is. So I don't see why not we can provide extend that guarantee to co-lending arrangement between a bank and an NBFC.
Hari, if I can add here, one of the largest public sector, one of the largest private sector banks in the last 3 years. Definitely, they are the most risk-averse entities on this planet Earth, and don't want to change them. Don't even attempt to change them. I think the way it should work is to get RBI and NABARD involved somehow. I think if there's a PSL lending for agriculture, and interestingly, what the law says, if farmer pays loan on time, he gets 2% interest subvention. What if a farmer follows a climate resilient practice and pay? Can he get a 1%, 0.5% interest subvention? So I think those policies have to percolate from the top down. And at best, we try luck with your bank, go to the chairman and the board. Don't talk to anyone below that.
You're right.
Even then, I always have different views, right? So, look, I think the biggest problem with agri sector is the government involvement. I mean, it's one sector which has got maximum involvement, and there is a maximum problem. I mean, if we get again RBI to come and give us it, NABARD to do it, NABARD, with all due respect, I mean, they've been 6 lakh crore balance sheet. How much have they done at the real farmers? I mean, to be honest, like foundations like Rabo does a wonderful job. I mean, Dheeraj might not know, but with one of their support, one of my portfolio company could come out with a price guarantee for farmers when they store the produce in the warehouse. So whenever the farmer stores it, he gets a guarantee that if you are selling when the price is 20 rupees a kg, no matter what happens, they will get 20 rupees kg as a minimum thing. And as a result, more and more farmers have started coming into storage facilities. And because of that of scale, I mean, banks have started co-lending with the portfolio company Arya, what I am mentioning. So I think the smart intervention is useful. Getting NABARD government, again, boss, I mean, you have to bring Minister of Finance, RBI, I mean, you've been trying this for like decades. So I don't know whether that's really going to matter. I mean, that's my viewpoint.
I also echo Dinesh's point, because I think someone whom we work, Varun, in doing kind of a buyback guarantee and guaranteeing end user, buyers of business jump in business. In my opinion, I mean, what we've seen, a little bit of the loans we've done, is instead of getting the government involved, the government is a great follower. But I think that's the place where there can be innovation in the future, of where agriculture companies or agri-financing or even credit scoring, different kinds of models haven't been explored at all. It's completely a blank slate. If that can reduce the cost of transaction or of collection, then it's likely banks will see this as a play to, for them.
No, I agree, and probably, there is some kind of some signals or green shoot as you see. Like you had private sector credit guarantee programs, and only recently the government has allowed under the NABARD's FPO, the Ministry of Ag's loan guarantee program, even NBFCs, the triple B credit rating are now allowed to access the NABARD guarantees, which they earlier was a triple A requirement. Is kind of ridiculous. If the NBFCs triple A, why do they even need a guarantee, and why do you even care? But one is that. I think second is you see banks, such as State Bank of India, trying to enable co-lending by helping co-lending move to a centralized channel as opposed to a branch banking. It's a big deal for a public sector bank which principally operates through branch banking. And you see a few co-lendings now slowly gathering momentum. See, the market will find it so small, but maybe RBI classifying ag NBFCs on par with NBFC MFIs is enough of a tweak to get the capital providers in the table to make a meaningful impact on cost of capital.
So I totally agree with Jinesh. Like once government comes in, like so it takes a lot of time. It slows down the process. At the same point, when you see the agriculture value chain, it's all based on the faith. Farmers just believe government and sometimes the SBI or any other specialized bank is a faithful bank get the loan from. Right now, that strong faith is not there with NBFC. That's why it's quite struggling. Even like both at the same point, both are right, I would say. But as a founder, we have to take the opportunity where like the risk is lower. But like sometimes the NBFCs are a better option where the collateral is a concern. Yeah. When the scalability potential is there, government is definitely an option because we have seen in Andhra Pradesh going from like 200 trash like 20,000 families is like a huge leap for us. So we see both the partners coming forward and definitely NBFCs and MFI. I was talking to Mitrata just before that. It's like see a potential synergies out there.
But you think those rates will work? Interest rates, this MFI, I know what they want.
I think so everybody's mentioned the same thing. In agriculture, the margins are high. If you can crack it well, it can work out well. So we need to understand where the margins are right. Like even if we in our business model we have identified 30s of commodities. So finally we stick to 6 where the margins are pretty high, even for the farmer to do an extra effort for processing, and even for the consumer who wants to pay extra money. So we need to understand where the synergies are matching.
The different strokes for different folks.
So, and the headache, trying to rebut. So yes, I think government intervention is always a topic of debate and rightfully so. So first of all, I think this Arya drop is a great case study. We should go to RBI and we should push. But I think on government intervention, I think thankfully government doesn't work on a venture capital model. They don't have a 7-year time frame, so their policies are relatively long term. And I'll give you one example. While I was at Rabobank, we worked on National Horticulture Mission, 2005. Government allocated 2,000 crores to horticulture sector. 2005 to 2023, the horticulture production has moved from 100 million tons to 330 million tons. Government intervention. 70 million people came out of poverty. Government intervention. So I think those who are critiquing government, who is the largest LP in the venture capital fund in India? SIDBI. Where? Government. I'm just referring to the government intervention. If you want to repeat it, so give it to it, so it's your head.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple of points here, right? Venture investing has a timeline of 5 to 7 years. Their LPs are sitting on their net return. They can't fund all the models. Now, agri and climate specifically, because we have been talking a lot about supply chain investments, right? digitize the process or provide market linkages, provide input. Those are not climate interventions. I'm sorry. The climate interventions go to the farm gate, it affects the farmer. Even after so many years, irrigation is still a problem for the farmers, right? That's not been solved. The number one problem in the minds of farmers which have rain-fed irrigation is the rainfall, and that is because of climate. Can we have solutions for that? The farmers which have irrigation, the main thing that's going on their minds is pests, right? And pests affect their crops, and what are the solutions for that? And then these may not be the models which venture capital can afford to fund because they have to show return. And then it's a policy, it's government, it's other players in the ecosystem who have to come together and solve for this. And there might be different capital, there might be different players. It's not a growth and exponential kind of model, it's a limit profitability, sustainable model. That's what I would say.
Yes, Maya.
Oh, I'll actually just respond to that by way of quick introduction. Green Artha invests in means and modes of production, and this is the bucket that he believes and doesn't believe should be invested in. But it's precisely for the couple of reasons. One is because, shout out to folks like me, right? There are folks who are enabling people who are making stuff and building things to get further. There are partners and collaborators who believe that science and technology also has a ecosystem. And because we have the ability to now see business models that can work and how you can bring different types of capital in, where the levers are to actually make this work within the investment cycle of VC world. So I will say that I would disagree with your point that in that time period it is actually possible, you just need to know where the levers are.
So within the subsectors, if you look at new crops, then you can. But there are certain models which require much more capital and longer time periods, right? Investments in new type of seeds, that has been a very recent thing, like 2-3 years, and funds are now open to the idea of investing in this. That's one subsector. But climate as a whole is pretty complex, and it has to be funded by like DFIs or government.
So question to the funders. Do the funds need to have a longer fund life so you are able to invest in stuff which is longer return gestation period or something like that? And B, again, I'm not the expert of the regulation here, but do you need investors who are, say, philanthropies who are expecting a much lower rate of return? So you can invest in those spaces which by their nature are not very high return generating. There's two questions I want to pose to the
I have a very different view. I mean, look, funders are anyways, VCs in the country are now extending the fund life, right? I mean, it used to be 7 plus 1 plus 1. I think now we are doing 10 plus 1 plus 1, right? And hopefully, you're going to do 15 plus 5. That's kind of fun because if you want to focus on agriculture sector, you need longer capital, you need a different way of investments. And also science-based innovations are going to be part, right? I mean, it takes 5-6 years for product to be approved because ultimately you and I are going to consume it, right? We don't want to consume a product which has not been really approved, right? So we will have a longer fund life. I think international investors have started accepting the fact. Indian investors are resisting the fact. I mean, but SIDBIs have started. SIDBI and NABARD are okay. Individual family offices, they think 7 years is a long term and we think 7 years is a zero starting point. So at some point that will happen, but that's why. Because if I were to, let's say, invest in Promethean, right? I mean, nothing's going to happen for the first 5 years. You will move from 2,000 places to 10,000. In a country like India, 10,000 is such nothing, zero value of it, right? So we need scale because you're talking of solving a problem of 90 million to 130 million farming families. That's like 35 to 40% of India's population. So you will need a different cycle around it. Do I need more lower interest capital or lower return expectation? Answer is no. I'm in the business of making business, right? A farmer is also a businessman. He needs to make profit. It will reach to a stage where the food prices in this country will be high. I mean, structurally it's getting on a higher note. I don't expect Indians to pay lower for the prices. So government might come out with a model saying the people who really can't afford food, they will be given free food for next 20 years of life. Or people who can afford that will have to pay a price. I mean, we all, if you go to the restaurants, the cost of a fine dining restaurant is moved from 500, 600 rupees to now closer towards 1200, 1500 rupees. We are all paying it. We are all okay to do it. I think we will be okay.
That's a slightly different view. I don't think asking a fund to keep extending is the only answer. Because often as a non-profit, when I go to a philanthropy, and when we work with startups, we work with for-profits, they think I'm working with quote-unquote sinners. When I go to VC guys, they think I'm stupid. between a sin and being stupid is a funny place. Okay? But the point is, I think you need both. A lot of the philanthropic capital is going into supporting R&D, figuring out new business models, right? And then you have growth capital coming in. So there's a time and place for each. The fact is that because there's so much available of both, but they're working in different silos. We need both to come together either for Climate Smart Ag or just to do justice to the kind of innovation we have in India.
Yeah, I will confirm that this is exactly the point, right? The climate capital stack needs to work better, and then the timelines will all make sense for the companies to get to that real time in these times when investors will start coming in. There are already people who can provide that funding, who can give them that funding. It just needs to be managed.
I think one thing which can happen is the public stack around climate. Like there's already Fresh Tantra working on a soil stack. I think those are the highways that we need to create for a lot of innovation to ride on that. The biggest innovation in last 20 years, UPI. India stack, government of India. I don't know. Right? So let me review.
I mean, UPI is working on Geo network. That's Mukesh Ambani.
Mukesh wouldn't have tried without UPI. Yeah? So let's leave it there.
I think what also, and everybody's been talking about the problems, but to look at the way forward, India has come a long journey and has its own passages of various revolutions that we have seen, be it food grains, be it horticulture. We are seeing lots of development on F&B sector. Food grains has been a fantastic journey, needless to say. To today's 330 million from what 200 or 220 million just about 15 years back. So what India needs is also a technological revolution in the seeds. Hardly any seeds are being worked on. If we look at our average yields in the country, we are at least 10 times lower in some commodities as compared to the rest of the world, and there's a lot of scope there. And that, along with, sustainability is a journey. You have to walk that path along with the farmers and the stakeholders. If companies like us are today doing it, who's paying it? We are paying it today because we want to walk that path. We know that it's going to be a long journey, but at the end of the day, we have to walk that path along with various stakeholders to bring it to the end consumer. At some point in time, they will see a value, but India needs to chart its own path from supply perspective and answer those challenges at the forefront.
Well, at 15 minutes, so Parag, I want you to complete your point. I think we have been consistently interjected, but two bigger questions which I want to ask first the investors. That between this digital, physical, supply chain, the three buckets, going back to your construct, which places do you think are getting more money right now, and which will get more money, say, going forward in the next couple of years? Because time to my lender had, I see jahan Lakshmi hai, wahan paisa jayega. If I see an asset, it will get financed. Again, simplistic thinking. Whereas in having satellite imagery or remote sensing or some kind of solutions, maybe the monetization is lower and therefore debt funding would come. Equity is the other perspective. So I want the investors to answer that, and I want the innovators to also answer as to what kind of financing, corporate financing, dealer financing, customer farmer financing. Where do you think are the bigger, which are the easily addressed challenges, which are the more difficult to address challenges? So.
funds is available for physical assets now to fund the capex in some way. They are still looking for the apt financial model which can work to sustain them, but at least to seed them initially there is capital available only for climate solutions.
I think it's a combination. You said whether it's digital or physical. Look, I think, to be honest, digital is important, but in agriculture you need a lot of physical network, right? Without the government interventions of roads, railways, storage infrastructure, creating a network of people who can create India's export destinations. You need to those investments. A lot of things would come from private sector, but I think government is a large stakeholder. I think it's important that we don't discard government because there are areas, I want the government to reduce the cost of logistics by at least 20% from today, right? They are paying 14 to 15% on average. If I can make it to 8 or 10% and do an average global standard, invest into the hard assets, cold storage, manufacturing companies. I think for the first time, the government of India is talking about investing into manufacturing sector and saying agriculture and manufacturing could work at the intersections, and so a lot of agri-produce, which is in India, it's currently 2 to 3% of agri-produce is processed. If we can make it to 10-12%, it will solve the issues of manufacturing growth, will solve issues of employment generation. The farmer's sons who doesn't want to work in farming but will want to work in factories. So all those things are important. Hopefully, we will be a large export player, not as big as Netherlands, but at some point we ideally want to match numbers because India produces a lot, our yield is low. If I produce too fast, the food prices will crash and farmers will commit suicide. So if I can create this infrastructure all in all, I think overall it will work out. But it's a long journey going to be.
One thing I'd like to add to the same part, like being a startup, what we are seeing like this, lot of startups will scale so big that we can't build the same thing. But what we can do, we can utilize their network, we can utilize their USB and bring it in our ecosystem. That's what the best thing we can do. And like we were trying to do the same thing because we can't build the same wheel again, but we can use the same wheel to do with our own car. And that's there has to be like everybody has to work together. The digital, physical, the suppliers, everybody has to work together. And to make those models efficient, it has to be like work together, understanding everybody's USPs, understanding everybody's unit economics, where the margins are there, and who will get the maximum benefit. At the same point, once you make it efficient, farmers will get the benefit, and even the consumer will get their benefit at the same point. Being the traceability point of view, being the quality point of view, what everybody is looking forward across the world, and the carbon footprint. And once we do it all together, I think so. That's the best vision. I think everybody should have what we try to build in the whole ecosystem. Like as Srini sir has shared that's what Incubator is doing. We have been working in a couple of projects where 2-3 startups are coming together to solve the same problem. And that's possible. We started working with cold storage because we know we can't do all the processing at the same time. So we need people who can preserve the product so that once we need processing, we can take it out from the cold storage and then do the processing. Now coming back to the financing question, I would say like since last many decades, I'm just 26, I can't comment on those parts. But like people have sucked out everything from the farmers. Their confidence are at the lowest stage, especially when I'm talking about the smaller margin farmers. That's why they are doing suicides and coming out of agriculture. So when I started the company, when I used to go to the farm, they used to throw me away from the farm. They're like, we don't need another city guy to just help us. So what we have analyzed, even when we worked in the tribal belts in Northeast, I was there for 2 years working for the farmers. They were like, we don't need you. We are happy in our lives. So sometimes we know we want to support the farmers. At the end, when the whole ecosystem will become efficient, it will support the farmers. But I don't know if this taking capacity is there or not. So we do work either with village level entrepreneurs, some farmers can just come forward. They are the most better option, and that's where the government is coming forward, where the FPO is coming forward. Because government support is there, at the same point there are people who are ready to take this for 1,000 farmers in their network. So we can work with the entities where the risk is shared. I can't comment anywhere, but
farmer plus one, farmer plus two kind of.
Actually, you can't just go with one farmer. They can't take the risk. They have their own they have a lot of things to do. They can't just put in another thing. So it has to be somebody who can take responsibility of them. And we need to make those supply chains so transparent so that we can see the end person is getting benefited out of it.
Yeah. So, see, what is I learned, I've been first in drip irrigation and then in dairy, so it's like kind of 10 years there. And it's a long, difficult, and expensive task. So, the point is that if you look at the raising debt, I mean, in cold chain it is very interesting. We are even saddled with the GST of 18%. So, between GST and interest, it's almost 40%. Right? So it makes it that much more difficult, but we understand the realities on the ground. I mean, it's not possible to grasp. Love a government intervention where it comes down to 5% like agriculture, but that's not happening. So I think I second what Varun says. I think a lot of our work and effort has to be on how we can partner on value chain, or doing more on the value addition part. Just by selling milk or chilling milk, it's not going to be enough. So we have to get the farmers to do more. So that they can earn more money and we can get a share of that. So that's the first part. But having said that, I would love lower interest rates. It's still a challenge. Yeah. On the farmer side, I really can't figure it out, because see, this is something we have been struggling for nearly a year now. Whether it is trust deficit on either side, it is. I mean, I get into these conversations where people say that your farmer has to be pouring for 2 years. 2 years before you can give him a capital loan. It doesn't make sense. A guy who's pouring for 2 years will get a loan. Kahin na kahin se nikal jayega. So that's where I feel a lot of work has to be done. How can we get more and more farmers? I mean, if dairy is seen as a driver of the doubling farmer income initiative, how do we get more and more new farmers through dairy? I think that's a challenge we should try to crack collectively.
You're right. I was also guilty as charged with putting those parameters in, the risk of the getting agency for capital financing. But perhaps I want to hand over the stage back to the Rabo Foundation team and kind of see what kind of impact is Dahej Finance actually having. Neeraj can tell you if he's going to listen, but I think we have a little presentation by Sambodhi and another of the two brands, which kind of shows the impact of an ongoing program, which is the Good Credit Guarantee Program. Maybe only brands.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Hani. Okay, so as impact financiers and impact investors, being modest organizations, we still all would like to announce our transactions when we first pull it off. Well, nothing really has happened. Only dispersing money from point A to point B, and then there is a big celebration going on. So we're happy today that with our, in 2021, announced COVID Response Fund, which is a collaboration between 3 foundations, USDFC, and 3 MDFCs, where we address certain topics like FPO financing, AgTech financing, renewable energy. We are now we're proud to present you some results of the first 2 years of that engagement. And we're happy that somebody, as the MEL organization that guides us with that, is now here today to present you these first results. So I would like to give the floor to KZF from somebody.
Okay, hi, I'm Kezia. I represent Sambodhi, and I come wearing an evaluator's hat. So, yeah, I'll just quickly talk about the findings that we have. This is regarding the program that Rabo is currently working on. It's called the COVID-19 Response Fund for Agri-Transition. We all know that agri-transition is not a topic to be dealt with in isolation. There are a lot of elements of sustainability, technology, all of that comes into it. And with that, the program intends to look at 3 specific outcomes. So the first is at the lender level, where the program is looking at building capacities to provide loans to high-risk borrowers. When we say high risk, it contains operational, financial, and industrial risk. The second one is de-risking the borrowers or the enterprises themselves so that they can access debt and equity funding. And the third is at the smallholder farmer level. We're not going to touch upon the farmer level, but we'll share some findings with regards to the lenders and NBFCs. So the learnings for the lenders, what we see is for a guarantee scheme or a mechanism to work, there needs to be a goal alignment. That is, that yes, we want to see investment in de-risking of enterprises in asset classes or domains such as agtech, renewable energy, which are deemed high risk because of lack of collaterals and other things, right? So what works in this context is having that alignment between the partners, the NBFCs that we're talking about, the lenders, the NBFCs. Second is also to have some kind of a measure or a matrix to come up with success, like sectoral expansion or financial additionality in terms of volume and value. And the third is the guarantee can also be a plus to these NBFCs when it especially when it comes to strengthening the credit flow. However, all of these come with a challenge. There is a challenge in raising capital. We already talked about it, especially in agtech and renewable energy. And we have seen that happening in solutions which are tech-based for food loss or agtech overall. And the solutions cannot be one size fit for all. So our study is progressively trying to find or learn about what could be those challenges and innovations which can change the perception of the lenders. And yes, as an early sign or a small win, we can see that the perception of the lenders are changing. The second is with regards to the borrowers. I've already talked about the 4 asset classes that we have. We have seen over the last 1 year an increase in the average payout, especially when it comes to renewable energy and MPOs. But when it comes to food loss and agtech, again, because of the challenges that I just talked about, there has been a decrease in the average payout. However, the good news is that we see that the payouts that are happening is happening to first-time borrowers in this high-risk enterprise category. The second is they have also been able to achieve some kind of net profit, and this is the data coming from the last 1 year. Again, there are challenges. In terms of additional loan or capacity to avail additional equity and debt loan, there's still way to go. And one of the important things is that we also want to look at inclusion of women in this sector, which seems to be slow but still having seen traction. So yeah, in a nutshell, I think we are seeing early change as a result of guarantees. There are boundary conditions and some things that program as well as impact should look at together, because there are no benchmarks, there are no measurement that has happened in the past which is rigorous or scientific. So there is a need for us to come up with learnings and evidence as much as possible, and also ask questions like, is a guarantee claim a good thing or a bad thing? To what extent a guarantee claim is a good thing or a bad, right? So these are some of the questions that we're still asking, and we still have some more answers to find, but yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirti. Maybe now we take a few audience questions. Take 2 questions.
Hello everyone. Hello. Hello.
You're audible, yeah.
I think I don't need a mic. So, hi everyone, my name is Yash and I'm the co-founder of a company called Fertile Digas. We work with women in rural India, and I was very impressed with insights Varun had to share on the plight of farmers and how they do not have the confidence. My question is to the panel. I would focus on the topic which was climate smart agriculture. How do we maximize environmental impact in a country like India, where majority of the farmers are small and marginal, 85% of them with less than 2 hectares of land holdings, right?
They are highly efficient in their operations, but the land holdings are too small to create a significant impact. While Garima, can I just add on to it? Yeah, sure, I'll keep it short. While Garima was saying that there has not been enough work on the seeds, I would again come back and reiterate what Varun was saying, that farmers in our country, I'm coming from my own farms right now to attend this event, and they have to depend for every little thing on the market. For seeds, for pesticides, for fertilizers, and even when they have to sell their own product. And hybrid seeds, they cannot grow it, so they grow it once and again the next season they have to buy their own seeds, right? So yeah, what do you expect out of the farmers? That should the small and marginal farmers, should the population have to go down in the country to make that impact? Like, that's
Hi. No, I think engaging conversation, Rajiv, I co-founded Pranama Ventures and GT. My piece is threefold. One is that in terms of focusing on financing is not going to solve the country's problem, because financing we've had enough from multiple banks and multiple sources. The key piece is to look at that beside financing, and folks like Rabobank, which have the global framework in place, to bring in the right mix of technology and the structure, because India has a socio-political challenge around the FD space. So how that can be bridged, because on the other flip side, looking at the way, if India produces more, I agree with Jinesh, they could drop the food prices. And I give you a context. I'm supposed to pick up 1 million ton worth of broken rice. Today India has gone out on the market. You look at the prices from 385 per metric ton. I'm not able to buy anything less than 580 to about $600 per metric ton. So that is one context which is also important as an agri sector, that if you want to give them, so how do you balance that out? That's the first part. The second part is that how do we give them the support for all these infrastructure problems, whether the mechanized farming is not possible because of being marginal, small farmers. Second part is the warehousing piece. And the third part is to ensure that all this consistently become part of an ecosystem, that we are able to give them better returns versus the 10,000 rupees from a size of farm versus taking to 50,000. I think that will solve, and I don't know how the panel would look at it, all these complex things.
First question, do you want to take that very well? Second question, right to the future.
So, first of all, what I meant to say was that India has had a fantastic journey, and I did not imply that we do not have a technological intervention via seed, but what I meant was we need another revolution in certain commodities. And to your point of fragmentation, there are two things. Number one, the rate of adoption in India is extremely high. Consider an example of BT cotton. Despite of the fragmentation, the rate of adoption in India was 95% in a short span of time. So farmer of the country, my perception is one of the smartest today. They follow a traditional farming. They are extremely smart to know what they need for the soil, even for any kind of changes on the farm. Whilst the advisory, and I know we are running short on time, but whilst the advisory takes its own time, but a farmer always deploys a certain part of the farm to see what changes happen. If it is good, then they apply it to the rest of the farm. And they've been using, nowhere in the world a farmer uses the land so effectively as in India. We have at least 3 crops. The farmer can have at least 3 crops in a year. They use this land as a factory. Nowhere else in this world it happens so efficiently. I think fragmentation will be answered via FPOs. We are seeing a lot of changes happening, geotagging of the farm, FPOs. The second and third generation of FPOs will be very smart, and we will have a kind of a consolidation amongst the farm land.
Can I have just 1 minute? So yes, like your question, we can have a small farmers, like what's the difference we are able to see. But let me give you a unit economics right now. You won't believe the price of wheat, the gehu in UK is 16 rupees a kg at farm gate. The price of wheat in India is 20 rupees. So Indian farmers can never compete, especially small farmers, with the UK farmers. Especially even if we have 2 cycles, if we can have 150 days 300 days of cycle, investing in pounds, still their cost is low because their scale is too high. But at the same point, when the farmers lose their confidence, we need to identify what is their USP. If we can identify their USP, then we can see the world food supply. And that's why we are not into wheat or cotton, something where mechanization can actually crack it. You won't believe in UK itself, where the price of wheat is so low, they are losing 40 million pounds of their apple every year because nobody is there to pluck it. We have people out here, so we need to find our USP. What are the products we can grow which they can't? What are the products they can do we can't? So we need to understand the global world food supply. If we can track those things, India has their own USP. We have 25% supply of mango. We can rule the world with the mango pulse supply, but we don't. We're just processing 3%. How can we increase that infrastructure? How we can increase the quality standards? That's what central government is doing, quality standards. If we can track those things, easily those small farmers can become like a small machines for us. And that's what we want. We don't want them to be machine, sorry for the wrong word. We want them to be like
we are not recording this conversation. Anybody want to take question number 2? Devendra?
I can answer part of the question, especially on the inflation side. I think part of the inflation issue can be addressed by demand-supply alignment. I think we are in a huge regional and seasonal arbitrage being in agriculture, right? I think there are enough tech now available, and I'm very bullish on remote sensing, which can potentially predict supply in time and make it more demand-driven. So I think that's partly it can be solved through that. But second thing I can tell you that inflation is a systematic issue. It's contradictory. You want farmer income to double and you want to pay less price. So I think we have to accept, and policymakers have to accept, and we need to be willing to pay more. That's all I want to say.
Well, yeah, I think that kind of brings us to the end of this, I would say, 90-minute conversation. I was asked 90 minutes, so we are on time, which had 4:35. But I think I would like to say a few points at least I brought. We kind of bucket into 3 kind of sub-verticals: digital supply chain. Each subsector throws up its own challenges of fundraising, but I think largely people agreed that from a debt financing perspective, probably farmer plus 1, farmer plus 2 is definitely easier, given the trust deficit at the field level, and indeed the technology, the product will have to work for a given period of time with the farmers. When it comes to raising money, clearly not one model was not superior to the other, but clearly there was a need for looking at new areas of market interventions, addressing more new sources of inefficiency rather than more Me Too models. Trying to do the same, especially where equity is concerned, but also for debt as well, because you are just going to be in a very competitive marketplace. And focus on areas of dire needs, such as the daily value chain, silage, irrigation, soil testing. These are kind of areas. And of course, we've not yet agreed on whether Indian demand versus export demand is sufficient for sustainable commodities. That clearly is a divided house, and that's absolutely fine because there are 2 schools of thought on that. I think certainly blended finance is no magic mantra, no magic bullet for increasing ease of financing into the space, but certainly encouraging insights from blended finance and credit guarantees pushing various providers of commercial capital to do a little bit more for the space, and specifically, private sector interventions, in fact, leading the way for the government sector interventions to also come, and both have their own place under the sun. So I would say broadly, this is kind of what we discussed, and thank you to a very eminent panel for being absolutely transparent and having kind of chai pe charcha, of course, without chai here, but thank you everybody, and thank you audience for your attention.